The word of the day is cofunctions. And so what you're thinking of whenever you hear the word cofunction, you should first off picture a triangle, a right triangle in your mind, and then picture the fact that this triangle has two angles that share all three sides, right? The hypotenuse 13 is the hypotenuse for theta, and it's the hypotenuse for alpha. The side 5 is the adjacent for theta, but it's the opposite for alpha. And 12 is the opposite for theta and the adjacent for alpha. And here's the point. These two share the exact same triangle. And since sine, cosine are built out of sides of the triangle, it should make sense that somehow these are going to be related to each other. So if we look at it and try and figure it out, the sine of theta, so we're looking at theta, sine is the opposite over hypotenuse, that's 12 over 13. The cosine of theta would be 5 over 13. Now let's look at alpha. Sine of alpha is opposite over hypotenuse. That would be 5 over 13. Cosine of alpha is adjacent over hypotenuse. That would be 12 over 13. And so I hope you see it. The cosine of alpha and the sine of theta are the exact same. That's because sine is the opposite side, so the opposite side here would be 12 over the hypotenuse. And cosine, when you look at alpha, cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. That 12 is the opposite for theta and the adjacent for alpha. And so then the trig functions that use that 12 are going to be the same. And likewise, when we look at cosine of theta and sine of alpha, those are going to be the same because now we've moved over to the 5, which is adjacent for alpha and adjacent for theta and opposite for alpha. So that's always the way it's going to be, that sine and cosine are going to match up for the opposite angles of the triangle. These are called cofunctions. So sine of alpha equals the cosine of theta, or the sine of theta equals the cosine of alpha. That will always be the way. So those are cofunctions. Also, tangent of theta is going to equal the cotangent of alpha, because those are just going to switch those sides. See, tangent, cotangent, neither of them use the hypotenuse. They just use the opposite and adjacent. And so if you flip what angle you are, you're flipping which is the opposite and adjacent. So these are cofunctions.